Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's BEAD Challenge Process webinar. Look, one of the most important pieces of this entire BEAD process for the state of Arkansas is going to be this broadband mapping challenge process. Okay, so before the state goes in the summertime next year and performs another grant round for broadband infrastructure deployment, we have to make sure that our state's broadband mapping is as correct as possible. So we've talked about this relentlessly on our county visits and in meeting after meeting with folks across the state. But we're finally getting there. We're almost there. This is critically important, so I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. It's one of the most critical things that we can do, as I said, and we can't get waiting to get started. We've had two webinars today. We had a first one at 10 a.m. for our state's ISPs and walk them through kind of a sneak peek at the portal, what it looks like, how to maneuver, what to do. We think it's very user-friendly. It's designed that way on purpose, and you'll see that in a little bit. So that one was at 10 for our ISPs. The one right now is for our elected officials, our county broadband committees, our nonprofit organizations, and there's a reason for that. And Julie and her team will touch on that very shortly. Before we get started, a few quick things. I want to thank Lane and Andrew specifically on our team here at the State Broadband Office. They have worked incredibly hard from a project management standpoint with both the challenge process, the challenge portal, and making sure that it is a success for our ISPs, for our stakeholders, for our residents, and for the entire state. So thank you to them for all of their efforts. What we are going to show you today is tentative. It has not been officially approved by NTIA, but we have been given permission from U.S. Commerce to go ahead and to present what it looks like. So if things change with some curing, that may go back and forth with NTIA, we'll make adjustments. If there's something super material that changes something, we'll do this all over again and make sure that everyone is prepared. So again, it's tentative, has not been officially signed off by U.S. Commerce, but we have been given permission to present to you today, and we need to. We have to work with a sense of urgency. This is critically important, as I said at the top, and so we're excited to show you today what it looks like. As Julie mentioned a second ago, please mute and turn off your cameras. We found in rehearsals that it was best to have folks with their cameras off for the bandwidth and what we're trying to show you today, so please respect that. This webinar will be recorded and available for download and rewatching for those who either want to see it again or weren't able to make it the first time, so that will be available. And if it's uncomfortable for anyone, we wanted to let you know up front, and you're free to exit the webinar today. Lastly, we may not get to everyone's questions at the end, and that's okay, because we were planning to come back on Friday for the ABLN network call and talk through this stuff again. So if we get your question, great. If not, we'll be able to talk about it on Friday. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Julie, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Glenn. I will turn it over to Evan. He is a GIS specialist here at Michael Baker. And here at Michael Baker, we are very happy to be a part of this, helping to support the people in the government of Arkansas. So we will walk you through what's coming next.
All right. My name is Evan. I am a GIS analyst with Michael Baker. And today we are going to talk about what is the BEAD challenge process, what you can challenge as part of this process, and who can submit challenges. Most importantly, we will also provide a demo of the software portal used for submitting challenges. And lastly, we'll run through some frequently asked questions and open this up for some Q&A at the end of the presentation. So what is the BEAD program? BEAD, or the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, was designed to ensure all residents have access to high-speed internet. And this is part of the IIJA bill passed by Congress back in 2021. As part of this program, Arkansas has been awarded $1 billion in BEAD funding to expand broadband to unserved and underserved locations. So what is the BEAD challenge process? This will be your opportunity to weigh in on whether the map of locations eligible for BEAD funding is accurate And this is also the process for the state of Arkansas to confirm locations eligible for BEAD funding before those subgrants are awarded. And lastly, this is the process is a requirement set forth by the NTIA in order to receive BEAD funding. So next, I'm going to talk briefly about the steps leading up to the challenge process, which is shown in that fourth block on this slide. I'm going to start on the far left with the 5-year plan. And this 5-year plan was where the state of Arkansas outlined the goals and priorities for expanding broadband, and this was submitted to the NTIA back in August of 2023. Initial Proposal Volume 1 and Volume 2, this document further explained how AR Connect will ensure every resident has access to broadband. This outlined the unserved and underserved locations, the guidelines and for community anchor institutions, and the guidelines for the challenge process, which we are talking about today. At this time, Initial Proposal Volume 1 has not been approved and is in a preliminary stage. So the challenge process phases. The challenge process is broken up into several phases as shown on this slide. During phase 1, 1 week prior to the start of the challenge phase, AR Connect will publish the locations eligible for BEAD funding, and this will exist on a separate publicly available map. Phase 2 will consist of the challenge phase, and this is where entities may challenge through our online portal. All challenged parties will be notified of our response via email, and this is where we confirm the minimum level of evidence was submitted for each challenge type that you will be submitting. Phase 3 is the rebuttal phase, and this is where those ISPs in this case can respond to specific challenges. And phase 4 will be our determination phase. This is where we do a final review of those rebutted challenges and confirm whether those rebutted challenges are either sustained or rejected. So what is your role as the challenger? As a challenger, it's your responsibility to Item 1, be knowledgeable about the challenge process. We will be releasing a challenge process guide, which outlines the evidence and requirements for each type of challenge. Item 2, identify your primary point of contact. Please identify someone who will be logging into the portal and submitting these challenges, who will be that person clicking the buttons inside the portal. Item 3, register for the challenge process. We will be releasing an online form where your point of contact can sign up and receive credentials to access the portal. And items 4 and 5, submit sufficient clear evidence within the allotted timeframes and respond timely to all communication from the State Broadband Office. So who may participate in the challenge process? Please note this challenge process is only open to broadband providers, nonprofit organizations, and units of local government. A full list of units of local government can be found in the Initial Proposal Volume 1, and we will touch on this a little bit later in the presentation. All right, so what can you challenge? Locations can only be challenged on the following grounds. Item 1, planned or existing service. These are locations where broadband service currently or soon will be deployed, not funded by federal or state grants. Item 2, enforceable commitment challenges. These are locations where broadband service currently or will soon be deployed, funded by federal or state grants. Provider service level challenges. These are locations where available broadband service shown on the map is incorrect. These are your availability, your speed test challenges, your latency challenges, data cap technology. I will note there the full evidence requirements that are set forth for these challenges are found in Initial Proposal Volume 1, and they will also be in our challenge guide. And item 4, community anchor institution classifications. These are your locations that are incorrectly classified as CAIs or not classified as CAIs. Also where 1 gig service to a CAI is incorrect. And lastly here, the challenge portal can only accept between 1 and 500 locations per challenge. For additional locations, please submit an additional challenge. All right, and up next, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Nick, who will be providing a software demonstration of the challenge portal that you'll be using.
All right, thank you so much, Evan. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Nick View. I'm the Broadband GIS team manager here at Michael Baker. I wanted to walk you through a demo of the AR Connect challenge portal that you all can actually use to submit BEAD challenges. So the first thing I wanted to show you is, as we mentioned, not everyone is allowed to submit BEAD challenges. Only units of local government, internet service providers, or nonprofit organizations are allowed to submit challenges. So in order to kind of gatekeep that, before you can submit challenges, you first have to register for an account. And this link here, this page will be up on the AR Connect website very shortly. And you can see there's a register button, and it just asks you for to fill out this form, to fill out a few basic pieces of information about yourself and your organization so that AR Connect can verify that you are an eligible challenger. Once you register, the AR Connect office will review that and get back to you with a username and password to log in and a link to the dashboard. When you log into the dashboard, this is what you'll initially see. You'll see this first kind of landing page. As I said, it's a dashboard that shows you a list of all of your challenges that you have submitted. You can see here in my dashboard, I have a number of challenges that I have submitted. These are all just kind of tests as we were getting the portal ready to go live. I have a number of challenges that I've submitted. When you first log in, your list will be empty here. There's a couple things I wanted to point out about this landing page, this dashboard. And the first is that you'll see on your list of challenges across the top, there are multiple tabs here. And these kind of walk you through the progress of your challenges as you submit them. So the first tab here, My Submitted Challenges, is just all of your challenges that you've submitted, kind of a wholesale look at everything. The second tab here, and right now mine is empty, is for needs revision. And this is if you submit a challenge, the broadband office may do an initial review of it, and they may decide that they would like you to change something in your challenge or maybe submit some more evidence along with your challenge. So if that happens, they'll send it back for revision and your challenge will show up here under needs revision. In that case, you can make those revisions and submit them back to the AR Connect office. The next tab, and again, mine is empty right now because none of my challenges have been reviewed. But when you submit, the AR Connect office will do an initial review of your challenge and they will either accept or deny it. And this is where you'll be able to see that. You'll see all of your challenges that have been reviewed and whether they were accepted or denied. The last tab over here is really just for you. It is withdrawn challenges. So if you submit a challenge and for any reason after the fact, you decide that you don't want to go ahead with that challenge, you want to withdraw that challenge, you can do that. And when you do that, they'll show up here. You'll see a list of all challenges that you've chosen to withdraw. The other feature and kind of the most important thing that's on this landing dashboard page is over here on the right-hand side, this nice big blue Add Challenge button. And this is where you will click to actually start the process of submitting a challenge. I'm going to click that now, and you'll see I'm brought over to a new page, this kind of map page. And in the center of the page is a map of Arkansas with all these colored dots for different locations all over it. I'll explain a little more in a little bit about working with this map and how to use the map. And then over here on the right-hand side, there is a panel where you can go through the process of basically filling out forms and submitting information and evidence about your challenge. I want to point out that over here in the upper left-hand corner of the portal, you have two buttons where you can switch back and forth between the dashboard view and the map view. And both of these views have this nice Add Challenge button to start adding a challenge. So I'm going to walk you through the process of actually submitting a challenge. In Michael Baker's work with other states, we found that one of the most common types of challenges that local governments and nonprofits like to submit is a speed test challenge, or in this case, we're calling a provider service level challenge. You can see there are other types of challenges here. You may want to submit some of those other types. A lot of nonprofits oftentimes also want to submit community anchor institution classification challenges. But for sake of example today, I'm going to choose to submit a provider service level challenge. And once I click on that, you'll see my next button down here on the lower right highlights, and I'm able to click that to move on to the next phase. Now, the next thing it asks me is what type of provider service level challenges are there? And you can see there are different types, availability, whether or not internet's even available at location, speed, latency, data cap, technology. And these are all explained in the initial proposals. And also there is going to be a challenge users guide that will be released on the AR Connect website that goes into detail about all of these different challenge types. For our example purposes today, I'm going to show you how to submit a speed challenge to challenge that people are getting slower internet speeds than are advertised. So I'll select speed. And again, here in the lower right, I can click the next button to move on to the next step. The next thing it wants to ask me here is this an MDU challenge? MDU is a multi-dwelling unit, like an apartment building. There's different protocols for submitting challenges for a multi-dwelling unit versus like a single family home. So it's going to ask you if you're filing an MDU challenge or not. In this case, I'm just going to say no. And again, click next to move on to the next phase. And now here you'll see there's some more form information that needs filled out. There's 3 particular items for a speed challenge. I will note that there are different form items that need to be filled out for different types of challenges. Different types of challenges just have different types of information required to submit. So if you submit other types of challenges, the forms will look a little different. There's some different questions. For a speed challenge, though, the first thing it wants to ask me is what is the internet service provider that I'm challenging? This has a list of all of the internet service providers in Arkansas. I'm going to, for example purposes here, just pick AT&T. Not picking on AT&T, just purely for example, because they're near the top of the list. The next thing it wants to ask me is to please select a technology type, how the internet is being delivered to this location that you are challenging. Either copper wire, such as like DSL, fiber, or fixed wireless. I'll choose copper wire for example purposes. And then the third thing is what is the nature of the speed category you would like to challenge? That the location is marked as served, meaning that it has acceptable internet service, but should actually be unserved or underserved, or that the location is marked as underserved, but should actually be unserved. So in this case, I'll choose the top one, that the location is marked as being served, but should actually be considered unserved or underserved. And once I fill out these 3 questions, it will allow me to go ahead and click the next button down in the lower right again. Now this next part is where you actually interact with the map to select your locations. And this map here is a map of all of the locations in Arkansas. And I want to emphasize that it is known that this map data is not 100% accurate. That's the entire purpose of this BEAD challenge process, is for you all to submit challenges and help to make the data that's in this map as good as it can possibly be. Now you'll see there's actually not a whole lot of dots in our map right here, and that's because the portal here is smart enough to filter as I click through. Some of you probably noticed back when I selected AT&T as the provider, the map got fewer dots on it. It filtered down to only show locations that AT&T serves. And then when I chose again to choose copper wire technology, the map filtered itself again to only show dots of locations that are served by AT&T with copper wire technology. So there's not a whole lot of dots in my map right now. But I want to now basically find the locations location or locations that I want to submit a challenge for. And so this map, I just want to point out some features of working with this map. It works very similar to like a Google map or other online maps that you may have used. I can use my mouse to kind of click and drag it around. I can use my scroll wheel to zoom in and out of the map. And you'll see as I zoom into the map, some more detail starts to show up, some towns, some street labels, property parcels, things of that nature. So the map gets more detailed as I zoom in. One thing that I think is kind of easy to miss, but that is important, is up here in the upper left of the map, there's this little white arrow. And if I click this, you'll see it opens a panel of map tools. And the first map tool here is just a legend that shows you what all the different colored dots in the map mean. In this case, for BEAD challenges, we're mostly concerned with the red dots for unserved, the blue dots for underserved, or you can see what is mostly in my map right now are these gray dots for locations that are considered to be served with broadband. Each of these has a checkbox next to it. If I click the checkbox, I can choose whether or not that category is shown in the map. The other thing I want to point out here in this kind of panel of map tools is way down at the bottom, you can change the map settings to kind of change the map background. So one that I think a lot of people will find very useful is the satellite imagery option. And then there's also this is one that I kind of prefer to work with. It's called the light map. So I'm going to choose mine to use this light background of the map. And I'll leave it there for the rest of the demo. I'm going to go ahead and go up here and click on my little white arrow again to close my panel of map tools. So now that I have the map kind of looking the way that I want to, I need to search around and find the location or locations that I'm actually challenging. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can, as I showed you before, just use your scroll wheel to zoom in on the map and kind of move around until you find the right spot. Or what's probably going to be easier most of the time is up here in the upper right, there's a search bar. Now I can use this to plug in specific addresses if I know the address I want to search for, or even just a town if I know what town I'm looking for. For instance, if I know that I'm going to be submitting a challenge for a location that's in Bentonville, I can type Bentonville and choose that, and my map will zoom over to Bentonville. And then I can zoom into my map using my scroll wheel and kind of move around and find the location that I want to submit a challenge for. So once you've got your map kind of in the right spot, you need to actually select the locations or kind of the dots on the map that you are submitting a challenge for. And there's a few ways you can do that. The first one is just that I can hover my mouse over one of these points and I can click on it. And it'll pop up a box telling me I can add this to my challenge. So if I click that, it'll pop up a second box just wanting me to confirm, making sure I didn't click the button on accident. And if I click confirm, you'll see it now adds this down into my list of selected locations for this challenge, this address 208 2nd Street in Bentonville. And if I only want to submit a challenge for this one location, then I'm good to go. But maybe you want to submit challenges for multiple locations. You can have multiple locations, as Evan mentioned, actually up to 500 locations in each challenge. So if I want to select additional locations to add on to this challenge, I can do the same thing again. I can just go to the address next door and hover my mouse pointer over it and click add to challenge again. And it'll add that second address into the list. Another way I can add locations is if I hold the shift key on my keyboard, I can then use my mouse to drag and drop a rectangle. And you'll see it will select all the locations inside that rectangle and ask me, I grabbed 5 locations. Do I want to add these to the challenge? And I can click to confirm that. You can see now I have all 7 of those locations that I selected added into my list of locations for this challenge. Another way that you may want to do this, you don't actually have to go through the map and click to select locations. If your organization has the ability and knowledge to work with some of the FCC's data, that broadband data collection data, those spreadsheets that you can download on the internet that have location IDs. Like you can see here, these are the location IDs associated with each one of these addresses. If you have the ability, if you know how to work with those, you can create a spreadsheet that has a list of location IDs that you want to challenge, and you can use this upload list of locations button to do that. Or again, if your organization has the ability and expertise to work with some map data, like maybe some shapefile data from a GIS system or a KML data set from Google Earth, and you have one of those that outlines, draws an area around the locations that you're challenging, you can use this select or upload area button to upload a file that will select all the locations inside the shape. So 3 different ways that you can kind of select locations in the map to be challenged. Now, once you're happy with the set of locations that you have selected, these are the locations that you want to submit your speed challenge for, to say that these do not get the internet service that the data says they do. You'll see I can go down here in the lower right again and click my next button. And this part for a speed challenge, this is where, well, for all the challenge types, you have to submit evidence, right? You need to send the AR Connect office some kind of evidence to substantiate your challenge, to prove that these locations do not get the internet service that the data says it does. And in this case, your main type of evidence is going to be speed tests, internet speed tests. Now for the speed test, there are a couple steps here. You first have to download the speed test evidence spreadsheet. So if you click this button, you'll see it downloads a little spreadsheet. And I already have one opened up that I've kind of filled out. When you first download this, it'll be entirely blank. I've filled out one here with just some kind of fake data for testing purposes to show you. But you have to fill this in, which is definitely a little bit of a data task. So you have to fill in the location ID. And if you don't know what that is, remember, we can go back to our portal and you can look at these list of locations, and each address right here, this number at the top, is the location ID for that address. You can also click on points on the map, and it'll show you also what that location ID is. So you need to put in the location ID. The NTIA requirements are that you can't just do one speed test. You have to do 3 different speed tests at 3 different times, just for thoroughness, to show that the speeds actually are lower. What you want to do is you want to take that speed test and basically take a screen grab of it and name a file. So like here's one that I took. You can see it's just a JPEG image from a speed test website that shows my upload and download speeds. And I have in a folder over here, I have 3 of these: speed test 1, speed test 2, and speed test 3. And they're just called 1, 2, 3. And so I just put the name of those files in here. You need to put in the name of the person that you're submitting this on behalf of. You need to put that person's address. And then you also need a file that certifies their speed tier. Basically, this is just a screenshot of like the internet provider's web page, or maybe it's a picture that the person sent you of their bill that just shows what speed level they subscribe to, like what they pay for, whether they pay for a 100 megabit download plan or a 1 gigabit download plan. You also need, obviously, because you as a local government or nonprofit are submitting information on a person's behalf, you need to have that person's consent. So some kind of evidence, again, just a picture file, maybe an email, but something that shows that this person has consented to you submitting information on their behalf. So you need to have all of these basically picture files loaded into a folder somewhere that you can submit. Then it wants you to show your speed test method, the date and time, and these have to be, they can be on the same date, I believe, but you have to have different times, IP address, download and upload speed. And these things are all accessible from that speed test. If you take the speed test and look at the screenshot of your speed test, it'll show you the IP address, the download speed, and the upload speed. So you need to fill this out. This is for one location. If you have one location, you'll have 3 speed tests. If you add a second location, you would need 3 more lines for the 3 speed tests for that other location. So you need to kind of fill out this spreadsheet. And then once you've filled it out, you can drag and drop it into this little file upload box here. And all this is just a simple, I'm just taking my spreadsheet and I'm just dragging and dropping. And you see it'll show me I uploaded my speed test evidence CSV file. The second box down here, again, it's a file upload box. This is where you need to upload all of those images. So in this case, I just have my 3 speed tests, my speed test 1, 2, and 3. I can kind of drag to select all of those and again, drag and drop those in. You would also want to submit, again, if we go back to our spreadsheet, the picture of someone's like bill showing what package they subscribe to, and also that consent file. I don't have those in my kind of test upload files here, but you would also want to upload those. Once I've uploaded my 2 files, I click next. And the very last step here is just a checkbox saying that you attest legally that the evidence, the information that you have provided is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. And once you do that, your next button down here will turn into a submit challenge button. You can click that. And kind of similar to what we've seen before, it just pops up a confirmation box. Did you really mean to click that button? And if you did, you click submit, and it'll spin for a second and submit your challenge. And now it will show you, here you can see at the top of the list, 7 locations submitted. If I go over here back to my dashboard, you'll see there's a new row, a new line here at the top of my dashboard that shows the speed test I just submitted, 7 locations submitted today, December 13th. And so that is how you can use the portal to submit a speed test challenge. I'll now send it back over to Julie.
Thank you so much, Nick, for that demonstration of the portal. And I know you all probably have lots of questions, and we'll open it up in just a few minutes for a live question and answer session. But for now, we just want to go over a few frequently asked questions that have come up. And the first one is, are the BEAD challenge process and the FCC's challenge process the same thing? The answer is no. The FCC challenge process determines the map of locations. That's where you can add, change, or remove locations from the map. And anyone can submit FCC challenges. So the BEAD challenge process determines which locations are eligible to receive BEAD funding. And further, it also defines whether those locations are served, unserved, or underserved. And as we've stated before, only permissible challengers can submit BEAD challenges. Another question is, once an ISP has been notified that a location has been challenged, can they immediately respond to a challenge? So for example, as a unit of local government, if you are challenging, let's just keep with the AT&T example, once they've been notified of their challenge, they cannot respond right away. AR Connect has designed its challenge process to work in distinct phases, and that's to allow for fairness and to give the staff time to review. So in the challenge portal, the button, the option for them to rebut, it will not even open up until that 30-day rebuttal phase starts. So again, it allows then the fairness on both sides. So the challenger side, you might submit a challenge on day 2 and you might submit another one on day 5. And then that ISP, they can't respond in sequence. They have to wait, and it gives them an opportunity it's fair for them because they have an opportunity to gather all their data. So can individuals participate in the BEAD challenge process? Per NTIA regulations, individuals themselves cannot submit a challenge. However, they can contact their local nonprofit or government unit, county judges, mayors, members of the General Assembly, school board members, justices of the peace, and city council members. And there might be some further definitions that AR Connect puts out. So your role as a person involved in local government would be to work with your constituents. And if they make you aware of some locations that they believe, for example, are unserved or underserved, or they want to, you know, bound together and say, well, here, we know that this apartment complex, you know, is not served, et cetera, then you can take that information and submit it, but you would need to use the same speed tests and everything that Nick showed you. So that's something that you can put out, and you can aggregate them together, for example, for a neighborhood. But what you can't do is, you know, just keep putting individual ones in together, you know, and have the individual come to you without that proof. So again, this is an opportunity for you to present your constituents, but they still need to bring you the same proof. So how many locations can be submitted in one challenge? So to facilitate the review phase, please limit your location numbers and the geographic area. The challenge portal software itself will only accept up to 500 locations, but we do recommend fewer, and we do recommend that you group them in meaningful ways. So for example, we use that neighborhood example. You know, if you want to submit them together for a particular neighborhood, but then submit a separate, different challenge for, say, a different neighborhood in your city. And that will just make it easier later on. Another example would be if you are putting in two different types of challenges, you obviously want to break them up as well. So I know a lot of you have been reaching out to AR Connect and asking, well, what happened to the funds from CPF or the other grant opportunities? So it is true that Arkansas has been awarding several grant programs to various ISPs, and people in your neighborhood may be asking, you know, where is my high-speed internet? So several funding programs have already been awarded, and those are in process. Some of them might have already started construction. Some of them might just be awarded, such as the CPF funds. So per NTIA regulations, those neighborhoods cannot also receive funding from the BEAD program. So that also means an ISP can't put in for funding where another ISP is already building or where they themselves are. And that is a special type of challenge that they would submit called an enforceable commitment. So then again, this is just an NTI regulation. If any funds are already being used at that location, then the BEAD funds cannot be available for that. So what can you as a permissible challenger do to make the process smoother? Just be prepared by attending this webinar. You've already done that. Keep up with your weekly and monthly meetings with AR Connect. Have your evidence ready. That means collecting the speed tests from the locations that you're going to challenge. Submit fewer locations per challenge. Can't stress that enough. It will help if a revision is needed. It will help just to get an answer, you know, back quicker. And also choose the correct category. And if you have a question about the category, you can always email. There's a help desk email that you can do that, or you can refer to the resource user guide, which will be available at least 1 week before the challenge portal goes live. So that is just an example of some of the frequently asked questions that we get. And I am going to turn on my camera and start taking some questions from those of you that are here this afternoon. We have a nice large group of people. So I ask that you either drop your question in. There's a little Q&A button up on the top of your Microsoft Teams screen. You can also raise your hand using the hand icon, and I will call on you. and I will moderate. So meaning if I don't know the answer, which, there's a good possibility it might be something I might want to hand over to Glenn or to Lane or to one of my colleagues from Baker. So please feel free. You can also put it in the chat. So does anyone have any questions? I see a raised hand from Barry. And Barry, please feel free to turn your camera on when you state your question.
Hello. Yeah, hi, this is Barry Mooring up in Benton County. Great presentation. I appreciate it. I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
One is I'm a little confused on who's challenging who, and maybe that's a something that was covered in the very beginning that I missed. But when we submit, so if the county judge or mayor or JP registers to be a challenger, it sounds to me like that challenge goes to an ISP, and an ISP ultimately would respond as to whether or not that challenge was valid. Is that true?
I can take this one, or Lane or Glenn, would you like to take it?
Yeah, Julie, you can take that one.
Okay. So, Barry, it's a good question. And of course, I could just say more information will be available in the resource guide, but it is a little confusing. So if you are a government official, what you are saying about the map usually is, hey, we don't have internet service here. Or you are saying that this area is served, but we know that we have only slow DSL here, or we don't have service at all, or they plan service and it's not here. So what you are challenging in that case is the ISP, but what you're really doing is challenging the map. You're challenging the validity of the map. So if there is no service in that area, it should show up as unserved. If it's showing up as served, there will be attached to it how it's served. Okay, so they're not just, the location itself doesn't just say we're served. It says who has that service. Okay, so if you click on a location and it says Comcast already has service there, and you're like, no, I just don't believe it. That's my mother-in-law's address. She was already there. There's a community center there, and they're telling me that they don't have service or it doesn't work or this or that. You are then challenging the location, but by default, you're challenging Comcast, because Comcast has told Arkansas Broadband, and they've told the FCC, we have service there. And you are letting the FCC know, we don't believe it. Here's our speed tests. Here's our bill. They're charging us too much for something that isn't a gigabyte service and it's supposed to be. So yeah, your question is addressed to, you're challenging the ISP. Now there's another challenge that you might be doing as a unit of local. Oh yeah.
And just real quick, I think, Barry, where you're going with it is, so you're going to put in the challenge, right? There's a 30-day window where you guys and committees and so forth, as long as there's an elected official as part of that, who presses the button, you put it in. The ISP will have a 30-day rebuttal period right after. Okay, so the first 30 days allows for the challenges by everyone. The next 30 days, the ISP will get notified that they were challenged and they get to rebut it or make their argument, right? Then we have a 30-day period where our office goes and adjudicates it. So is that what you were going on? You trying to figure that out?
That is the direction I was going. Barry, did you have any follow-up questions about that, or did Glenn and I both sort of cover that?
I have a related follow-up question. So in Benton County, we're a little over 300,000 people, about 150,000 addresses. About 54% of our county geographically, not demographically, geographically is not covered by broadband, by fiber, by wired broadband, I think I should say. My concern is we will rely heavily on our ISPs throughout this process, because we'll believe that they have the most actual information, because practically speaking, let's say we put out a notification to the public that, hey, you can challenge your broadband. And my office gets 1,200 requests to challenge it. And the process that was gone through is a pretty extensive process. There's not a resource in our county that could possibly file all those challenges. I'm kind of concerned about how in a larger county where we know that we have thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of households either not served or underserved. I'm a little concerned about how this process goes and about, being up at 2 o'clock in the morning and filling out yet one more challenge application from some farmer outside of Gentry. Can you help me with that a little bit? It's going to be a very onerous thing to do in a larger county. And that's where we'll need our ISPs to help us, quite
Sure,
honestly.
look, and I think from quickly on our side, Barry, I would say that would presume, and maybe it is, and you've checked it out with the folks who you've done a lot of mapping up there, that would presume that all those locations are not accurately accounted for on the map when it's published, right? So if Benton County is represented on the map much like it should be, then in theory, at least, you wouldn't have a big wave of challenges because it's already represented accurately.
Yeah.
So the
So
wave,
you're
if it's misrepresented, then we face that problem.
right. So think about it, Barry, as you're challenging a positive. If the map shows those locations, they should be as unserved, meaning we don't have coverage there. So if you don't have coverage for 10,000 locations or 50,000 citizens, they should show as unserved. If they're underserved, which might be more likely what you're alluding to, they have some coverage, but it's fixed wireless or it's DSL. Those should show up on the map as underserved, meaning you don't have to do anything. So I would suggest there's also an opportunity at any time before the challenge portal opens for the broadband office to work on their list. Okay, it's called the deduplication process. They want to know what is currently served and what isn't. So you can forward an Excel file over to the office and see how that goes. But I believe, there's some confusion between, you don't have to prove the negative. You don't have to prove that you're not served. You don't have to prove that you're underserved. Unfortunately, if those locations are not on the map, which is what you might be saying, that goes back to the FCC challenge process, which someone else, Keith, had a question about that in the chat. And that goes back to what Glenn is saying, that, those maps are, that process of putting it through the FCC challenge map, you don't have to do that, 50,000 times. You can send a bulk Excel list over there and they'll take that, into consideration, because AR Connect wants to award these BEAD funds to get the service out to everyone in the communities. So they want more information. More information's the better. Okay, so I'm going to just let someone else have an opportunity. So Clara asks, does it have to say, and I think she might mean stay, in the county we are in, or if it spills over into the next county, will that be okay? Clara, I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you okay going ahead and showing yourself on camera, or at least speaking and explain a little bit more about your question?
Yes, ma'am. Our town is way up the top of our county. If a area wasn't being served and it was just an area, not like a community or a bunch of houses, but an area, could it be okay if it was over the county line, like if it also included part of Prairie County?
Yep, you're not limited as a challenger to anywhere on the map. Now, if you are just, if I believe what you're saying is, you represent local government in one county, but your service area or your constituents might live in another one, that's fine. That will be addressed. So we are getting close on time, and I do see a lot of questions still. So I'm going to try to take 2 more questions and then just remind you that Glenn and Lane and their staff are available on their regularly scheduled meetings with you. So I'm going to see, the next person I had was Adam. Adam, would you like to go ahead and state your question? Adam. Okay, maybe Adam is no longer available. Keith.
Yeah, I'll just have a follow-up on what Barry said. And maybe at another one of these weekly updates, we can discuss further into the volume, because he's talking about 300,000 people in Washington County. I mean, in Benton County. I'm in Washington County. I'm with the city of Fayetteville. So it would be fascinating to kind of maybe have a specific discussion on how do we select. I'm a prior GIS person, so I could see selecting a polygon of areas, because I know Barry up there has Beaver Lake, and there's huge areas that have issues with service, and I just can't imagine him. And his question is, how do I challenge this many locations? So I would really benefit from if we could have a discussion. I know we're about to end time with his question.
Yep.
And how do we deal with that? Because I know he has a significant challenge in that Beaver Lake area.
These are super great questions, and really there's the policy answer, which is what does the NTIA tell you can do, right? The federal government. And then there's the what will the portal let you do? So the portal will let you upload a shape file, a CSV file, an Excel file, and do multiple locations, as long as, again, they're not over 500. But in terms of what you're saying is, how on earth are we going to aggregate all this speed test data if that's what's required? And that is a huge concern. So here at Michael Baker, we will consult with some of our policy partners, and we'll look into that. And I know that Lane and Glenn will as well, and they'll talk to the NTIA federal program officer as well. So we'll do some research and definitely make sure they get back to you. So unfortunately, we don't have any more time for the live Q&A, but thank you so much for your participation, everyone. We could go on and on. We have a few more slides with just a little bit more info, and then we will have Lane wrap it up for you. So what can you do now? You can identify the contact in your organization who will submit the challenges and rebuttals for you, although you guys won't be doing rebuttals. Just review the challenge process resource and user guide when it comes out, and it will be available to download and view on the AR Connect website. Go ahead and start collecting speed test data now, and it sounds like there's a lot of questions around that, so that's going to be a hot topic in the next few weeks. Start collecting any other submission evidence documents. It might be related to billing or other things like that. And if you want, you can obtain a CostQuest Tier E license, and that is the fabric map layer. And that is the one that is available to local governments and nonprofits. And feel free again to email the AR Connect office and make sure that you keep checking in with Glenn for those meetings. And I'm sure we will have lots more questions that we can help you with. And I do believe we have a slide that just relates a little bit to the timeline after this. Yes, so what happens after the challenge process? So the purpose of the challenge process, as we've stated before, is really just to refine this map. We want this map to be as accurate as possible when AR Connect goes to award the money to the ISPs. So we don't want to award money to an area that doesn't need it and already has full service. So they will do a final review to check for the locations with enforceable commitments. So that's the ones where they already have a grant awarded. Then they will submit all the results from the BEAD challenge process to the NTIA for final review and approval. And then at least 60 days before the grant funds are allocated, AR Connect will post for public notice the final list for each location in CAI. And just a reminder of the dates, because the volume 1 is currently still waiting NTIA approval, we have just a tentative start date of January 2024. And you'll see that each phase is 30 calendar days. So if you start in January, it will be over in February for the challenge phase. The ISPs have their opportunity to rebut for a 30-day period. That would go into March. And then the final determination phase is where the AR Connect office and their support staff will be making those final determinations to say whether a challenge is sustained or it's rejected. And then all those, again, the award will happen no sooner than 60 days after the final list is published. So the entire process takes, the challenge process takes about 120 days. And I'm going to turn it now over to Lane at AR Connect. And I just want to say thank you so much. We appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy day to be here. And a few closing words from Lane.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate your presentation. Importantly, I appreciate everybody who joined today. As you can see, this is a complex process, but we're going to keep working with you. This is not the end of our conversation. We're going to continue meeting with you. We've got an ABLN meeting this Friday, and we can set up ad hoc meetings to, for instance, go over how you could submit more challenges to multiple locations at a time with either a shaped file or uploading a spreadsheet. So we're going to work with you on that. Keep those questions coming by way of email. We're going to see, we see all the emails in the chat. I'm sorry, all the questions in the chat. We're going to try to get to all those, responding to them at the ABLN meetings. So I do want to just remind you, this is not the end, it's not the be all of our training going into the challenge process, but it's just one more step, and we'll continue to provide information right up through the challenge process. So thank you for joining. Don't hesitate to reach out to us with questions. And I look forward to seeing you all at the ABLBN meeting on Friday. I hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you.